Hi, and welcome to this episode of Brainy Moms. I'm Dr. Amy Moore, and I am here with a very familiar voice, a visiting co-host, Sandra Zamalis from Learning RX.
Hi, everybody.
Sandy is filling in for Terry this week. So Sandy and I would like to introduce you to our guests today, John and Karen Yates. They are financial alignment coaches, founders of Inspire My Money, and authors of Own Your Financial Future, 7 Strategies to Get You Started Today. And they are here to talk to us about getting control of our finances in a very different way than you've ever heard before.
Welcome, John and Karen. Thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. So excited to be here with you guys.
Yes, thank you.
I was so excited when I found out the topic of today's podcast. In fact, after watching your personal story video on your website, I decided to prepare for today's discussion by forcing my husband to take money personality quizzes online with me to see what our own relationship with money was, which was comical but eye-opening. So I know our podcast listeners would love to hear your money story. So could you please share how you discovered your money story and began your journey to becoming financial alignment coaches?
Sure, I would love to. So that's why we're here. Wanted to share our experience, and hopefully it will inspire you to do something as well with yourself. So our journey started back in 2018, and just not that long ago. And what happened was we had just come back from vacation, and just like everybody else, we're like, oh my gosh, got to go to work now. And so we were realizing the struggle of, time with family, time on vacation that we all enjoy, and then coming back home and realizing, oh, here we are back in our real routine, and let's go back to work. And so we were at a point in our relationship 20 years down the road where we were just really struggling. We were at a really hard part of our life,
Of our marriage.
and our relationship. And so that after that vacation, we were like, oh my gosh, this is what we need more of to get back on track, and more time or more vacations. And how does that happen when you're working?
Right.
It doesn't. And so with our relationship struggling, it was just kind of a turning point to say, we have to do something. And what is that? And so
We had this crazy idea
Yeah.
that let's ditch our normal life. Let's get away from this 9 to 5, or really, let's be real, it wasn't 9 to 5, it was 7 to 5, daily grind. And we see each other for a couple hours a day. We see our kids for even less. And you've got the whole process of coming home and making dinner and cleaning up, and then it's a bedtime routine, and we didn't have any time. And so we said, well, let's ditch that. And we decided that, what, we want to do something completely different, and we're going to travel. We had wanted to travel and always thought that we were going to have to do that in retirement. And when you sit down and think about it, it's like, well, if you plan for retirement, 1, you have to hope that you have enough funds saved up. 2, you have to hope that you're in good enough health. And now 3, you have to hope that there isn't a global pandemic going on, which prevents you from traveling.
Right.
So we said, you know what, we're in good enough health. We don't have the funds at the moment. And there wasn't a pandemic. So 2 out of the 3. And reality was, our bank account was at about 0 at that moment. We'd gone through 4 job losses between the 2 of us. We'd had multiple out-of-state moves each time. And what really put us at 0 is we'd had a real estate flip that was supposed to do really phenomenal for us, and it ended up being a flop. And so we were back at 0, and we said, man, how do we do this? How do we go and travel when we have no money? And we didn't have jobs that we could work remotely. So we had to figure this out.
It's kind of crazy to think, when we tell our story, to look back on, we always hear people that are just struggling and at 0, and we're like, we both have college degrees. She was a chemist. I have a teaching degree. And as a chemist and a teacher, and we can't make it, it's just so frustrating. We bought in our homes every time we moved. We had real estate, investment real estate, and we were at 0 at 20 years later. And we were trying to figure out why was this happening? How could we change this? And with our relationship at a low point, we were like, oh my gosh, this is just a disaster in the making. And so how do you get out of that? Well, you just kind of find each other if you really want that to happen, and you decide what to do. And so with that, we said, okay, we're going to go do this. And so we just did what we needed to do. How do we create an online income? Well, that was the first thing. So I went on a mentorship, got qualified to go on this mentorship, did that for a couple months and figured out how to make money online. And that opened the door for the rest of it. So that's how we managed to take off.
But within 7 months of deciding, of really committing to this, we had this idea and we let it sit and stir, and we talked. This was not a decision that we made lightly in any way, shape, or form. I mean, we talked about all kinds of things, but we talked and talked and talked and talked.
Which helped our relationship.
A ton.
Just that goal setting kind of reformulated our relationship.
But we went through that process, and so we finally, a couple months later, said, okay, yes, this is what we're going to do. And within 7 months, we had saved up 1 year's worth of expenses, and we got on that plane with one-way tickets, and we haven't been back.
Wow. So, okay, so you went through a mentorship program, learned how to make money online. What did that look like?
Excuse me. The mentorship was kind of a last minute thing. This online guy that I've been following for just a couple of weeks had a teaching program, and you had to fill out a questionnaire and do some things to see if you would qualify to be one of the 10. And I was coming across this in the last week of his program and said, oh, well, this isn't going to really happen. But nonetheless, went ahead and did it and got into the mentorship. I was the last one into the mentorship. And after the fact, he tells me it's in Thailand. And I was like, well, that's not going to happen. We have no money. I can't fly to Thailand, do all this. And again, when that goal is present, you just look for ways. And so whatever happens to you in the, in the negative sense, like, okay, well, you can't go to Thailand, so that's out. That's over, go back to your normal life. But when that goal is present, when things are moving forward, you just find a way. And so
you find the opportunities.
Yeah, the next step was see how much airfare is. And lo and behold, a round trip ticket was $300 from the US to Thailand and back. And I was like, oh my gosh, how can you pass that up? So I went. I mean, you can't pass that up. Like I'm thinking thousands of dollars to go there and back. And it literally would cost us, I think, $600 for everything to get there and back on a plane. So for me to go from Kansas to Las Vegas, LA, and then out and back, $600 total. And so those
really eliminated that barrier where it was like, oh no, we can't do this.
Right.
And there was still a lot of scrambling because at the time he didn't have a valid passport. So it's like, okay, got to process that really quick. And there were still barriers, but that cost barrier then, once we really looked at it and said, okay, this is an opportunity that we don't want to pass up, and you start to find ways. And it really gets down to the communication, the alignment that we both said, yes, this is something that we really want to do. How do we make this happen?
You keep mentioning communication and, that in-depth year where you really talked through your financial problems. Can you share more about that with us? One of my favorite things on your website was you guys sharing your relationship to money and how you discovered how you were each looking at money differently. And I know our listeners would love to hear that. Can you share more?
Sure. That's really something that we've believed so strongly that it's a major part of our program, is that communication really solves so much. And really getting into like the money story, it really is, we each have a different money story, and it really comes from our childhood, our upbringing. And you and your sibling can have completely different money stories. It's really what yes, but it can be your sibling that grew up in the exact same environment. Oh, you're not my brother. That's gross. Even a sibling that grew up in the exact same house can have a completely different money story because it's what impacts you as a child. And so thinking about your money story, you really think about what are some of your first memories about money. And for the two of us, it's completely different. I grew up in a very frugal, very protective, almost afraid of money environment. And that affected how I reacted to money. And John had a completely different.
Yeah, so my story, sorry, my story was that, my dad started off going to college with a child full-time and working full-time midnights. And so I grew up with that mentality of get through school and work hard, and the rest will happen. And so he climbed the ladder very quickly. He was the president of an international plastics company at 32 years old or something. And money was never a worry. We were upper middle class and had a boat lifestyle and went skiing, pardon me, skiing every winter, and, had really it all looking back. As a child, you don't realize it, but looking back, it was pretty amazing. Had the sports car and, had friends who had swimming pools in their basement. And I'm like, looking back, that's not normal. and so, I grew up with that. And so money was never an issue. And so I always grew up with, what seemed normal today as adults, going out to dinner whenever you want and just going on vacation and doing the things, obviously at a different level as a child for me, but in our own sense, just using the money that we had to live that luxury lifestyle as much as possible. And so that's kind of my story. And so as an adult, where that takes me is money is not a worry. Just go to work hard, and be smart about how to grow your money exponentially. And so we attempted that. I was a financial advisor for a while and traded on the Wall Street, New York Stock Exchange with a small company in New York. And so I had all the knowledge for this, and it was just not happening. And so the communication for us is really what brought our two stories together in finding out what we really want for our life. And we were going about it, the same, we were going towards the same goal, yeah, but just a different path to get there. So with my beliefs and my thinking about how to get there was, scaring her to death. And so she was always holding back and stop. And, when I want to get a boat, like, oh no, that doesn't fit my story of save. But it fits my story of this luxury lifestyle. But the goal for her was to have memories and have close bonding family. And that was my goal with my boating lifestyle, was to have memories and have a close family lifestyle. Well, the different paths creates a conflict. And so once you come up with those two stories and realize the conflict, once you can get that out of the way and you realize the end goal is actually the same, the more communication, the more you start to see that happening.
Right. It just changes everything when you don't have that conflict, when you realize that destination that we both wanted is the same. Now we can communicate as to, let's get on the same path so that we're not fighting each other. We're not having conflict. We are actually working together towards this same goal on the same road. Then it just changes everything.
Yeah, so you talk about that you don't approach this from a numbers bottom line perspective, that you look at it more holistically, that there are 10 areas, of our lives that need to come into alignment for this to work. So can you talk more about that? It's interesting philosophy.
Sure. I mean, we know that money plays a role in literally every aspect of your life. Even from parenting, do you choose to send your child to a private school or do they go to the public school? Do they have extracurricular activities that cost money? All of that plays into, just the simple thing of parenting. Social interactions. Oh, do I want to go out drinking with my friends or do I want to go, do this or that with my friends? Well, it's going to cost money. And so looking at just the bottom line, it really negates so much of your life. And as money is interwoven within every aspect of our lives, we realize that we have to look at all of those. And what our program does is we actually have each person go through and look at all 10 of these aspects of their life and say, what is it that I want for my career? for my parenting life, for my social interactions, for my emotional life. What emotions do I want to have on a regular basis? And how do I create those situations that yield those emotions? And so we have each one go through individually and have them do that together, then look at those together and say, okay, yes, we want a lot of the same things. And so having really a holistic approach to everything that you would want to spend money on, and including, your career, where the money is coming from. Are you in a job that you're happy with? Or is this something that you really want to change? And having those discussions really changes the interaction between the two spouses.
Interesting. So you also talk about the secret sauce that you were missing when you were trying to figure all this out. Talk about that secret sauce.
Right. So the secret sauce is the alignment piece. And what we mean by that is the process that we went through from our struggle in the beginning. Our marriage was really not at a good spot. We were really having a hard time. And you can think of all the horror stories and they crossed our minds. And so we were there. And so the secret sauce is once we started communicating correctly, and that we went through that process of the following year, the following 8-9 months, and all of the communication that happened was just becoming aligned with each other. The communication of wanting to fulfill each other's goals, and to do it now, to do it currently. Not, our society is set up to set everything up for retirement, and our whole lives are set up for that one goal down the road, and yet we miss what's happening now. And so a lot of what we took in is figure out what we can do and what we want to do, and make as much as possible happen right now, no matter what. And I know a lot of people have a hard time, including us. It's a very scary place to go, to have that full-on commitment, because we're trained to think, oh, when I'm 60, when I'm 65, then we'll do that. And so it's very scary to commit to something that big right now. And that's why so many people don't do our lifestyle, but they do make massive changes within their own lives in their own ways. And so that's kind of the beauty of what we've seen happen, is through these 10 different categories of your lifestyle that you can actually pinpoint with each other and make strides towards, the money kind of falls into place. And that's kind of what we've seen, is the money just happens because your minds are aligned to think together now.
Right, and to work towards those same goals. And so we called alignment with the goals, with each other, and then with your money as well. So you're choosing to make those goals important, and you're making decisions based on each other, based on your relationship, and then your finances just naturally kind of go along in the same path. And it's really incredible when you get to witness it happen, because what can kind of seem like a struggle between two people, between a husband and wife, where there's conflict, and they suddenly open these lines of communication, and they're freely communicating, and they're sharing their goals and getting to the emotions, which is where we really drive these conversations. You have to get to the emotional aspect of what you want and of how you're feeling, and sharing that. It just gets both partners on the exact same page and realizing that we can do this together.
Just an example, in our 5-week program, the first 2 weeks we don't even look at numbers. It's all about how to communicate differently than you are now.
Did this translate to your kids as well? Did you include them in the conversation? Because I'm sure they were front and center watching this shift happen. Did you sit down and talk to them about changes that you were making and new patterns you were creating?
Definitely. And they were different ages at the time. There's 5.5 years between them. So our daughter was 6 and our son was 12 at the time. And so, we kind of shared with our son a little sooner what our plans were, because, we're going to leave the States. And, for him, it was a little bit of a bummer at first, because we had just moved like a little over a year before that. And he was like, wait, we're moving again. But he kind of quickly got over it. But with a 6-year-old, we're like, oh my gosh, like 6 months, 9 months is like forever and a day to a 6-year-old. So we didn't want to share it with her because we're like, oh my gosh, she's just going to want to like, oh, it'll just be so long. But yeah, we definitely
We
shared
put
with
some
them.
seeds in there, like some secret little questions to pull out some information and kind of prep her, to see if it would actually be okay.
Yeah, and the funny thing was, is when we told her, like, she was like, oh wait, Mom, Dad, you're not going to work? Okay, when are we leaving? Let's go now. I'm ready. Like, and she was all on board. But we definitely included them in financial conversations, telling them, hey, this is what we're doing. We're saving money for this. And one of the easy ways that we did it was we would still go out to eat. And the kids they both like to get lemonade when we would go out to eat as a treat. We didn't have it at home often. So, okay, we're going out to eat, maybe we'll get a lemonade. But we kind of brought them into the whole aspect of this planning by saying, you know what, if you don't get a lemonade, if you just get water with your meal, then we'll go ahead and we'll transfer that money into this account. And so we'd pull out our phone, use this little app, and we'd say, okay, we're going to transfer, the $5 that the 2 lemonades would have cost us. We're going to transfer it into the savings account. And they were like, oh yes, I'm contributing now, right? I am helping towards this goal. And it really made them part of the process, which helped in the long run. We weren't fighting with them like, oh, I want a lemonade. No, it was like, yeah, I'm not gonna have a lemonade. Can we put that money in that account? And so just bringing them into the process, having them be on board with it, really did help.
I love that idea. I mean, that has applicability in a lot of scenarios too. So let me just clarify for our listeners. You are not selling a program that says, hey, you want to travel the world instead of work? Do this. You're saying we have the secret sauce for you to align your goals, whatever they are, with each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We know that there are some people who want to travel the world, and that's great. We're welcome to, we welcome them with open arms. We will share so much with you. But if that's not you, there's still absolutely, this program is designed for whatever your goals are. We know that most people don't want to do that, there's things that are holding them where they are. And that's absolutely fine. There's no judgment on that. Like, you don't want to travel the world? Great. What is it that you really want? Do you want that nicer home? Do you want that really nice vacation? Do you want to, have a boat and do that on the weekends? Whatever that goal is, it really doesn't matter. It's really getting that alignment, that togetherness to where you can have that goal and have it now, not have it when you're 65 and a half and the government says that you should be retiring.
Right. Your life doesn't start at retirement. Your life is now. And so there's joy in the journey. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that we really firmly believe in, that you have to enjoy the process. And so there's plenty of financial people out there who will say, do whatever you have to do to save as much money as you can now, and, eat rice and beans, and, live in the cheapest place that you possibly can, and, walk to work when you can. And we're not that way. We know that you have to enjoy the process, or otherwise why are you doing it? You're not going to get to the end goal, because you're just going to give up if you hate the process. And so we are all about, enjoying life now. Yes, there are moderations, but you don't have to give up everything that you love in order to really achieve those goals. It's really that alignment between you and your spouse that makes all of the difference.
So do you find that asking couples to be very open and honest about their individual goals so that then they can collaborate on shared goals, do you find that there's some resistance there? Do you find that vulnerability is a roadblock to being able to communicate those goals? I just know that talking about money can be very scary, right? And you open up the weaknesses when you talk about money. And sometimes people would rather just walk through life blind and hope it all works out. So how do you help them break through those barriers?
Right. We understand that very, very well. From a very personal standpoint, I did not ever want to talk about money. John was a financial advisor. I was like, here, you deal with the money. You deal with it. I didn't want anything to do with it. He would try to have conversations with me. And I was exactly like you described. I would cower away. I would put up the stop sign and say, no, I do not want to do this. I don't want to have these conversations. And so we realized after this transformation happened that the 20 years that I had been doing that, we hadn't made the progress that we could have because we didn't have that communication. And so understanding that, we kind of know those buttons to kind of push to say, you know what, it's okay to have these discussions. And we don't start with discussions about money because we know that those are fraught with a lot of emotions. And so we start with conversations that are about something.
That's where the 10 categories come in. You can start with something simple and start with something that's comfortable, and you kind of work into a deeper conversation with each other. And that kind of helps get you to the next discussion. And then you continue on. And those are all wins. The first 5, 6, 7, 8 are all easy and comfortable and wins. And you're learning how to talk in depth with each other. Okay, now you get to the more difficult one about money, which is set up as talking about your goals. It's not talking about money. It's talking about your life goals. And you've just gone through 7 or 8 of those goals. And now you feel really good about reaching those goals together. And so now what is this next goal that happens to work with our job and our finances? How are we going to put that in position to do the best for us? And so it becomes an easier conversation when you set it up with 6 or 7 or 8 other conversations along the way that are relatively easy. And so the hard part is just kind of breaking through to the getting out of the routine, really getting into what is it truly deep down. You know, if money was no object and you could live where you wanted, what would you do? What would it look like? What would it feel like? You know, we didn't meet these people, but we read a lot about other people's stories. And this lady had always wanted to live on the ocean, and she was 2 states away from the ocean, and she never thought she could be there because her job was here. And she quit her job, moved to the ocean, and found a job with a better pay. And she's like, oh my gosh, I could have done this 20 years ago. And so if you never have that idea, if you never break out of that routine, then you're going to be stuck where you're at. And so these conversations help you get unstuck. And that's the beauty of getting to the end piece of that money, which is a difficult subject. Even if it's the 9th or 10th conversation that you're going to have, it still has a lot of emotion tied to it.
Do you find that it really kind of boils down to safety, like people feeling safe?
Absolutely.
I know money, I think that's really probably the sticking point about money, because money's just paper, right? But
Money's
it's that
paper.
Safety. It's that,
Yeah.
safety net so that you feel secure. So it sounds like those 10 categories that you go through, you're really working through those safety barriers and figuring out goals along the way.
Yeah, if you didn't have those safety nets, if you didn't have your routine, what would it look like? And everybody has a different story than where they're at. Everybody has their retirement story in mind when they talk about today. And so how do you pull some of that retirement story into today? Not that you can do it all, but maybe you can. We have essentially, we lived on the ocean for the last 18 months. It was amazing. We walked to the ocean, 100 yards from the ocean. Like, it's incredible. And I never imagined that 3 years ago. Never could have even imagined it.
We were living in Kansas, so smack dab in the middle of the U.S. You got a long plane ride either direction to get to the ocean.
So it was always my dream to live at the ocean. But until you break out of that routine and see something else,
Yeah, and breaking out of that routine really doesn't all boil down to, ditching it all and going and doing something completely different. But really breaking out of the routine of your thinking even. We find, everyone does this, right? You get stuck in your routine, and it all goes into the brain physiology. Our brain develops habits so we use it less.
They know.
Right? And so we all get stuck in these routines, and it's not saying anyone's wrong for doing it, but our whole program is to like break you out of that routine of thinking, just to explore other options, other possibilities. And what is it that you really, really want deep down? Because it may be that you want something very, very different than what you currently have.
Absolutely. So we need to take a quick break and let Sandy read a word from our sponsor, Learning RX. And when we come back, I want to start talking about some specific strategies that we can start with today.
Are you concerned about your child's reading or spelling performance? Are you worried your child's reading curriculum isn't thorough enough? Well, most learning struggles aren't the results of poor curriculum or instruction. They're typically caused by having cognitive skills that need to be strengthened. Skills like auditory processing, memory, and processing speed. Learning RX one-on-one brain training programs are designed to target and strengthen the skills that we rely on for reading, spelling, writing, and learning. Learning RX can help you identify which skills may be keeping your child from performing their best. In fact, we've worked with more than 100,000 children and adults who wanted to think and perform better. We'd like to help get your child on the path to a brighter and more confident future. Give Learning RX a call at 866-BRAIN-01 or visit learningrx.com. That's learningrx.com.
And we are back talking to John and Karen Yates from Inspire My Money. And so you guys have an ebook called Own Your Financial Future, 7 Strategies to Get You Started Today. And you are actually offering that to our listeners for free, right? And so can we talk about some of those strategies that our listeners could get started on?
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. One of the things that we really are firm believers in is not budgeting, actually. And I know that kind of sounds a little strange when you hear the word financial and coach. You think, oh, that must equal budgeting. But one of the things.
Yeah, I'm all excited now. No budget? Tell me more.
Exactly. The problem is that budgets, I really equate them with diets. So what happens when you go on a diet? You say, okay, I can't eat this food, I can't eat this food, and I can't eat this food. And you're going to be restrictive on what you eat, right? And then you see that donut sitting there, on the counter, and you're like, oh, I want that donut. And you just start thinking about that donut, and your brain is focused on this donut that you can't have because your diet doesn't allow it, right? And hours later, even if you didn't eat the donut, you're thinking about that donut. And it turns out that when you go off the diet, what happens? Most of the time, you gain back all the weight you lost, and sometimes even more than you had before. And so it's just this restrictive process. And the problem is, it's not triggering anything different in your thinking, in how you think about food. And so we find that budgets are the exact same way. Okay, we're going to restrict what you spend. We're going to tell you that you can only spend this much on your housing, and this much on your food budget, and this much for gas or whatever, right? And okay, it might work while you're on it. For many people, it does for some time. But then they have all these negative feelings while they're involved in this budget, right? Oh, I can't go out to dinner because I don't have money in my budget. And what happens? You start thinking, oh man, I really want to go out to dinner. And now all of a sudden that dinner out just becomes like this, pie in the sky kind of thing that you can't have. And you're thinking about it, and it's just all these negative feelings and emotions revolving around not going out to dinner.
And negative feelings about your money is really what happens.
Right. And so we shift it so that we are focused not on budgeting, but actually on expense tracking. And so we look backwards and we look at the expenses of what you had for the last month. What did you spend? And then having those discussions that we're so very adamant about having, and saying, how do I feel about how much that we spent on food, going out to eat, right? And so then we use that to forecast, what do we want to do this coming month? And so this is a monthly conversation, and it's between both spouses, right? This is not something that you do, oh, this is how I feel about it. No, this is how we feel about it. And now all of a sudden, you spend a little more than you wanted to the previous month. And you say, okay, well, maybe we should cut down a little bit this month on going out to eat. So now it comes up that, oh, when I go out to eat, oh, you know what? We said we were going to cut down this month. So what can we do? Well, we can go to a less expensive restaurant, or we can choose not to go out to eat. And we'll, make something at home.
So both of those decisions are now positive decisions.
Absolutely.
Right.
And so we changed that. So now all of a sudden this not going out to eat is now a win, because we made that decision based on our previous month, looking at our expenses, what we did. And now instead of this being negative, like, oh, I can't go out to eat, now it is, I am choosing not to go out to eat because it's more important for me to put that money towards my goal of XYZ. And so changing that mindset about money and about your spending and getting away from this restrictive feeling of this budget, which doesn't allow me to do things and makes me feel negative and uptight, and changing it instead to looking at my expenses and then making decisions together about being intentional with that money. Now we change those decisions from being negative to being positive. And now it's a win for both of us when we decide, you know what, we're just going to get some pizza, or we're going to make something at home.
Yeah, and that's classic goal-directed behavior, right? And the thinking that goes along with that. And so if you can adopt that mindset that, is my decision going to move me towards my goal that I've set, not that somebody set for me, but that we've set together, or is my decision going to take me further away from our goal? Then
Absolutely.
you have this sense of control, right? That the budget isn't controlling you, that you have all the
Absolutely.
control in the world, right? Because they're your goals. I really love that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really fundamental that we get away from that negative feeling, because there's so many emotions tied up with money already that we don't need to be playing more on top of them by saying, okay, this is this budget that you have to follow. And I mean, we see it all the time. People go off the budget and their spending just goes right back to where it was, or sometimes even worse. And it breaks my heart really to see this, because the problem with the budget is it does nothing to change the mindset. And so you're just, you go back to your old habits.
You're trying to be in a forced situation. You're trying to hang on for dear life until you get to retirement. Oh, and then, whether it's months down the road or even a couple of years down the road, it's just too hard to maintain. And you're always calculating, how long can I keep this up? And how much longer till retirement? And it's just not worth it. It's not worth it at some point. And so they stop. And so they get back right to where they were. And it
Or
just
worse.
doesn't help. Yeah, it just doesn't help. So they may have had some money built up in the meantime, but all of that holding back and frustration gets released at some point.
So your coaching program, Inspire My Money, how does that work? Is it individual? Is it with groups? Do you work one-to-one? And what do your clients really learn as they're working with you?
So we do one-on-one right now. We're trying to build it up to get to group, but it's a whole different setup. So right now it's one-on-one, couples, couple to couple. And they go through a course program, and then we have one-on-one discussions every other week, and that's how we continue through the program with them.
Right. So they really learn, the focus is really on this alignment that we've talked about, alignment with each other, alignment with the goals, and those goals are aligned with each other, and the finances aligned with all of that. So we get this wonderful triad of alignment, where we start to see a lot of massive positive results from that. And so coming out of it, a couple, they have the ability to communicate about money, about their goals. They have a clear path on where they are going, where they want to go together. It's not something that we set at all. It's something that they have set together, and we are just facilitators really to help that along, to help them define that if they need help with that, and to help them find the little ways to save money, in ways that maybe they don't even realize are possible, and to really facilitate how they can get to those goals even sooner than they might have before. And definitely by getting that communication together, they're already 5 steps ahead.
So
It
what are
sounds
some
like
of
a
those?
real mentoring relationship you're building with
It
them
is, yeah,
too.
it is.
Yeah.
And so to share some of the, I know you asked about some specific strategies, and you just kind of secretly put it in there that ways that you don't even know are there. What are those ways?
I mean, there's a lot of hidden things that people spend money on that they don't necessarily realize. And one of the biggest that we find is actually food. And it's not just going out to eat. Going out to eat is obviously a lot more costly than making food yourself. But we found, I mean, one of the things that we found that we were vastly surprised at is just making a meal plan for the week. In doing this, we were able to save like ourselves, like, you know, $250, $300 a month just by making a meal plan. We're like, how does that happen? How does that work? But it's really making sure that, you know, one, you have ingredients on hand. Two, you're not sitting there at 5 o'clock when you're hungry saying, oh, what are we going to have for dinner? You know, and then three, saying, oh man, I got to go to the store because I don't have, you know, XYZ ingredient. No, you eliminate all of that. And it just lowers that barrier to actually making food at home. But you also end up wasting a lot less because you're planning that, okay, you know what, if I'm buying this bag of spinach that I know I'm not going to use all of it in, you know, this recipe, you know, 3 days later, I'm going to plan to use the spinach in something else so that it's not being wasteful. And just by doing the simple thing of menu planning, you can save a lot of money every single month, which just multiplies over the course of the year.
And do you find that that's more successful if couples meal plan together, or does the one who cooks make all the decisions and everybody else just has to accept what the menu says?
Oh no, this is definitely a holistic thing. So we bring the entire family together. What do you like for dinner? What do you like for dinner? And so the plan really goes into detail when you get into it. Of every 2 weeks, you have a 2-week menu plan, and we go to the, you know, it's very detailed in the course where you go to the grocery store for this certain things on this week, and then on the opposite, the following week, you go for these items. And so we don't use coupons. We don't do any kind of that stuff. That's all bonus if you want to get into all that. But the object of the game is to eliminate going to the store. And so when you do go, you know exactly what you're going to get on this week, and it's going to hold you over for the next 2 weeks. And so it's a very strategic, detailed plan. Tons of hours of research have gone into it, and tons of money has gone into our bank account because of it. And so at the end of our journey, before we left, one of the things that we were trying to get to, because we're very healthy eaters, try to be, was that I always wanted to get into the organic foods and start buying organic. Well, because produce and everything else as much as we could. So by eliminating our food bill, our decision was, okay, well, let's transition into organic. Before, we could never really, didn't want to afford it, couldn't afford it, whatever you want to say, you know. But now with all of that savings, we were like, okay, let's transition. So our food bill kind of crept back up, but we were eating what we wanted to eat. And that felt good for both of us, you know.
Sure. Well, and that has health savings across the lifespan as well. I mean, that's an investment in longevity. Yeah,
definitely.
And I love that holistic idea really is like a team building exercise too. Like, especially if you're sitting down at the table with your kids and everyone's deciding, what would you really love to eat this week? What would you like to see on the menu this week? And everyone's working together. That's great. It's not always, you know, possible sometimes, but it's nice. I like the team building aspect of it.
Yeah, we definitely include the kids because generally the details fall to me. I'm more of the planner, more of the detail orientated one. But like I get tired of deciding every week. So it's like, okay, what do we want on the menu this week? And I just open it up and it's like, okay, bring it on. And you know, oh wait, we had that twice last week. No, we're not having that this week. But we definitely include them and make them part of it because I don't want to be making all those decisions, and John doesn't either. So we open it up.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, those are just tips for kind of our situation. But when you get into it, if that's not fitting for your family to save that money there, it's the goals that you've set up for each other, for the family, that kind of takes hold. And if eating out 4 or 5 times a week is your goal and makes you feel really good, and you both agree and align with that, then that's perfect. That's what you want. It's not how to save money on food. It's how to align yourself with the goal. Because I know, you know, as an example, my parents used to go out 5-6 times a week. and that's what they wanted to do. And that's okay. It's not that you can't, that you're ruining your financial life because of this. No, you're enjoying your life together now, and you've set your money, you've directed your money towards that goal. And so everything else kind of works out.
So then you just have to find another area that isn't so important,
Right.
that
Exactly.
maybe you can adjust your spending in,
Yeah.
that
And
isn't so
there's-
important to you.
Exactly.
And what happens is it kind of grows, because the bigger things, the little things are kind of your day to day and month to month, but the bigger things is where you really kind of change your life, whether it's the house or the cars or vacations, those are thousands upon thousands of dollars. If you can save 50,000, 100,000 on a house, on your next house, okay, well, that'll take care of some things for that end retirement goal as well. Can you save, you could save 50 or $60,000 on your car situation over the next 10, 20 years also,
Yeah,
just by rearranging and looking and aligning what that looks like in the future. So as much as we talk today about what it looks like right now today, those strategies are huge when you get into the bigger numbers and the bigger items of life, that can be life-changing. And nobody really tends to plan on those $60,000, $100,000 chunks that can change your life. They think, oh, my 401k will take care of me when I'm 65.
Yeah.
And you can double or triple that amount by the time you get there.
Do you provide guidance for couples who have found themselves in debt?
Definitely. That's very common. The numbers are staggering as to the amount of debt that Americans have. And so it's definitely in there.
Everybody's in debt, whether it's student loans or credit cards or,
The vast majority of people have debt. And so, yes, we definitely address that. We definitely help people figure out a plan to address that and to keep them from falling into that cycle. And that really goes into that whole mindset again of, changing that mindset so that, once they're done with a program, they're not done with what they have learned. They're not off the budget. They are simply carrying forward with what they have learned, and they've changed that mindset. And so it's definitely a part of our program and how to handle that, how to tackle it together and really get through that and change that mindset so you're not in that situation again, a year, 2 years, 5 years down the road, because we've done the work to change the mindset so that it doesn't happen again.
So is there one last thing you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I think we've kind of said it all throughout, but I think it is the most important part, is really sitting down and having a heart-to-heart, because it doesn't matter what level your relationship is at, whether you guys feel that you're really on top of everything and really good relationship, things are going well, or that you were where we were at and we really either needed a heart-to-heart or things were going to look even worse. But to have that heart-to-heart about what you want your life to look like now, not 20, 30, 40 years from now for some people, but right now, how does that look? And if money was no object and you could land wherever you wanted to land, what would it look like? And you start to weigh, okay, how do we do it? Can we do it? Should we do it? There's just all kinds of different decisions that never really get talked about. And so to bring those conversations out on a regular basis is really powerful. And it just creates a new habit to get into those kinds of conversations. So every Sunday we have it on our calendar, pops up on our phone, goals today. And so we sit down and have sometimes a 2-minute conversation and sometimes a 3-hour conversation. But to have that habit of checking in with communication is probably the most important piece.
Right. And then I just like to add to that one quick thing is, don't let your lack of finances right now prevent you from doing something that you really want to do. If you have a dream, go after that dream. Your situation right now is not where you are stuck. And so go after it. Do something that you want to, that you love, that you want to do, so that, as you age, as you get older, that you don't have the regret that, hey, I didn't do this.
Great advice. So we are out of time and need to wrap up, but I just want to thank our guests today, John and Karen Yates. Thank you so much for spending this hour with us, for giving our listeners such great tips. And if you'd like to connect with John and Karen or learn more about their coaching program, you can visit inspiremymoney.com/secret. And we'll put their social media handles and those links to download the free ebook, Own Your Financial Future, 7 Strategies to Get You Started Today. We'll put all that in our show notes. So thank you so much for listening today. If you liked our show, we would love it if you would leave us a 5-star review and rating on Apple Podcasts. If you'd rather watch us, we are on YouTube. And please follow us on social media at the Brainy Moms and at Dr._Amy Moore. So until next time, look, we're busy moms and you're busy moms. So we're out.